And welcome to the 104th Annual Meeting of Ursa Farmers Co-op. This is the third annual meeting in a row at this location. As a reminder, the meeting of 2020 was held inside this building as the country has experienced the COVID pandemic. I'm sure many of our current board members and staff members remember doing that annual meeting virtually. It was a year that we were required to embrace change. Before we officially open this meeting, I would like to thank each and every patron for their support and partnership with this company. I say thank you to you, knowing that many in this room have family members who attended this company's original startup events and are the first patrons. Just as an announcement, during this meeting, as a gathered group, we'll have a moment of silence to reflect, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and then an invocation. This meeting of Ursa Farmers Co-op is officially open. I humbly ask you to join me in a moment of silence to remember the employees and patrons who have passed away since our last meeting. Remembering them that are no longer with us, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag will be on. Give us a moment to turn the projector on, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. I invite Mike Jansen to make his way to the podium. Mike has graced us with many invitations at this particular event, and we thank him greatly for the years of service.
Thank you, board, managers. Thank you for being here tonight. And I think before I say this prayer, I just want to say one thing to everybody that's here. And I think I speak on behalf of Tom Bardolph. Both of us have been here for 30 years. This is our last year that we're going to be employees of Ursa Farmers Co-op. And there's a person I need to thank who's in here, Wendell Ray, and I know Ron Neustrauss is not here. 30 years ago at a board meeting, they suggested my name as an employee for Ursa Farmers. I can never repay you guys or thank you guys enough. Most of all, I think on behalf of Tom, I can say it has been our honor and pleasure to be part of you guys' farm operation for 30 years. We wish you guys the best. May God bless you all. Form an attitude of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for all that we have, and we thank you for allowing us to be stewards of your land. We also thank you for the wonderful harvest that we're about to have, the weather that we've had to make this harvest one of the best that it could be. We also ask that you be with all of us as harvest time is among us. It'll be a big harvest. It'll be a busy harvest. Please protect all those who are in this room tonight. And may God bless everyone in this room. And this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
At this time, I call Brock Eustace to the podium, and he will give the call to this meeting.
To stockholders of Ursa Farmers Cooperative Company. Notice is hereby given by order of the Board of Directors that the 104th Annual Meeting of the stockholders of the Ursa Farmers Cooperative Company will be held on Tuesday, August 20, 2024, beginning at 7 p.m. at the Ursa Administrative Office in Ursa, Illinois, for the following purposes: to receive and act upon the reports of the officers and directors from the preceding year, for the election of directors to serve for a term of 2 years. Nominations include Brock Eustace, Eric Grady, Lance Arnold, Jeff Moore, Justin Myers. Any new business that may come before the board. Brock Eustace, Secretary.
At this time, I call Karen Voss to the podium to give our teller's report.
This evening, August 20th, 2024, we have 289,593 votes for stock and equity. We need 33.33% for quorum, which is 96,521 votes. We have registered this evening 113,467 votes, therefore we have a quorum.
I now recall Brock Eustace to the podium where he will go through the minutes of the 2023 annual meeting.
Ursa Farmers Cooperative 103rd Annual Meeting, August 15th, 2023, at the Ursa Administrative Office. President Charles Kruger called the meeting to order at 7 p.m. Mike Jansen provided an invocation. Secretary Craig Suter provided the call to the meeting, including nominating new board members. Charles Kruger invited teller Karen Voss to announce the quorum report. She advised that we had 117,926 votes, and we needed 33% of those votes. There were 97,571 votes present, so a quorum was met. Craig Suter read the minutes from last year's annual meeting. Seeing no objections, Eric Cassens, treasurer, provided the audit report. Last year's financials will be available upon request. Roger Hugenberg gave the general manager's report. He thanked everyone for attending. He read through an article from Dr. Charles Ingram about the importance of co-op members being educated on what makes a cooperative successful. The concept of cooperatives is timeless. The key to a successful co-op is people working toward a mutual benefit. Roger recognized the employees that are retiring this year. Kim Booker, operations manager, gave an overview of the operations throughout the past year and thanked all the customers present for a safe, successful year. Nominating chairperson Adam Jones asked Terry Schlittman to be temporary secretary as he read the nominating report. Mike Knoll, nominating committee secretary, announced to the committee that the committee met and nominated 3 candidates for 3 open positions, incumbents Craig Suter and Jason Plunkett, as well as Drew Gadsden. There were no questions from the crowd. Karen Voss announced the candidates with the most votes were Craig Suter, Jason Plunkett, and Drew Gadsden. Charles Kruger then recognized Ted Kenor for his 11-year tenure on the board. He finished up with closing comments by thanking everyone for attending. He wished everyone a safe fall and bountiful harvest. The motion for meeting adjournment was made by Ben Hugenberg. The meeting was adjourned. Respectfully submitted, Craig Suter.
Thank you for that report, Brock. At this time, I will call Board Treasurer Eric Cassens to the podium to give the audit report.
Okay, you've all got a booklet with you. You want to follow along? We have our balance sheet for total current assets. We have $55,192,298. Total property and equipment, $57,291,191. Gives us in total other assets of $9,138,303. For total assets of $121,621,792. Are there any questions of the balance sheet? Okay, now we'll go on to the liabilities. Total current liabilities of $47,409,273. Long-term liabilities $23,878,271. gives us total liabilities of $71,287,544. So we have total patrons' equity of $50,334,248, which gives us total liabilities and patron equity of $121,621,792. Are there any questions of the liabilities or anything on the treasurer's report? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, there we go. That's part of it. Okay, we're moving on to the income statement now. The grain margin, we have $11,249,792. Merchandiser's margin, $1,312,871, which gives us a gross trading margin of $12,562,663. Service income, we had a $7,713,522. Now, operating assets, total operating assets of $18,356,282. Income from operations, $1,919,903. Total other income, $4,089,302. Provisions for income taxes, $591,960. Net earnings, $5,417,245. Are there any questions of that? None? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cassis. Might be those in. At this time, I'd like to call Ursa Farmers Co-op General Manager Roger Hugenberg to the podium.
Seems like we're moving right through this agenda, don't we? First and foremost, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's really nice to see a good crowd. There's a lot of things to celebrate. There's a lot of things to discuss. I think it's good that we have a crowd, and we do appreciate it. So as Eric mentioned, I'm Roger Hugenberg. I'm the General Manager. Tonight, I plan on keeping my comments brief in light of the schedule, and begin with a sincere thank you to each of you for not only attending tonight's 104th annual meeting, but also for your patronage this past year. I don't plan on spending time going over the financial performance of the past year, as you've already heard from Eric, as he went through the income statement and balance sheet. This information, as well as my detailed report and the reports of the location and departments that make up your cooperative, are listed within your annual meeting booklet. It is my hope that each of you take some time in the near future to read the reports and understand the health and direction of your cooperative. My closing comments towards the financials of your cooperative are that we had a record year with earnings in excess of $6 million. We boosted shareholder equity, which is the total value of your cooperative, to over $50 million. And we increased working capital by $5 million year over year to $12 million. In recognition of this financial performance and health of your cooperative, we retired old stock, we issued new stock, and we paid out a cash patronage. Tonight should be a night of celebration for our cooperative, and for many it's not, and I understand that. If you read the various reports within the annual meeting booklet, you will see that your cooperative had its share of challenges this past year. Not all locations and departments made money or hit board and management goals. A very difficult decision was made on July 15th by the board to close the feed department. This was not an easy decision, but one the board felt was necessary for the continued health and well-being of the cooperative as a whole. I, as your general manager, take full responsibility for all activities associated with your cooperative. I take seriously this role and fully understand the implications of such actions on you, the members, and on affected employees. I have personally visited with many and given background as to what culminated this decision, and I'm certain that communication could have been done differently. My apologies to those patron owners of this cooperative that feel betrayed, misinformed, or misled. This was not my intention, nor the intention of the board. I'm fully aware that I have a fiduciary responsibility to the 4,700 owners of this cooperative to do what is in the best interests of all members. I firmly believe this action was inevitable, and I compliment the board on making this tough decision. I also believe through adversity comes opportunity, and I pledge to you to continue searching for ways to add value and to make your cooperative relevant. Your cooperative is governed by a 7-member board of directors. You can see them up in front of you here tonight. These individuals represent the trade area within your cooperative geography. They meet monthly for a period of 4 hours, plus they provide additional days for special meetings, for conducting my review, which is done twice annually, for attending annual meetings, for attending customer appreciation, for attending special events. There are many times when they park their planner and their combine to make sure that they are present in person to meet. Board meetings are held at each location throughout the fiscal year. Board members are compensated $125 per meeting, plus mileage. They're not in it for the money. And they're asked to do what's in the best interest of the cooperative, which is made up of the membership. They take their position seriously, and they truly understand the value of the co-op. They serve when others chose not to, and I greatly respect what each of these do. Tonight, we have 2 board members, Charles Kruger and Eric Cassins, that were retiring from the board. Each has served 5 consecutive terms totaling 10 years of service. These 2 have been in the trenches of the decisions affecting your cooperative and have been instrumental in guidance. Each has attended each meeting, trying to balance the perspective when making decisions as to the impact of the cooperative as a whole and on the individual members. When in doubt, they lean heavily toward what is in the best interest of the membership. Charles, Eric, I have greatly appreciated you answering the call and for your service as a UFC board member. Your guidance, support, spirited objections, willingness to participate, and dedication to this cooperative is immeasurable. I consider you 2 friends and will be forever grateful for your service. Please join me now in giving a round of applause to Charles and Eric. As I close out my comments tonight, I want to specifically mention and thank our most recent and upcoming retirees. These include Judy Ludwig, Kurt Johnson, Ken Gray, Brenda Wright, Tom Bodoff, Mike Jansen, and Monty Rowland. I wish each of these health, happiness, and prosperity as they begin a new chapter of their lives. I would also be remiss if I did not personally thank my current UFC Board of Directors and all UFC employees along with their spouses. Each has given their time and talents in which to move your cooperative into the future. Once again, thank you for attending tonight's meeting. Thank you for your patronage, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve. Wishing you a bountiful and safe harvest.
Roger. I now call to the podium Kent Buckert to give an operations report.
Thank you. Just want to take a few minutes to talk a little bit first about the feed department. So, Ursa Farmers Co-op has been in the feed business from the start, since 1920. So the stories that you hear about shelling corn, grinding corn, burning the corn cobs, and mixing complete feed. So, good old days, the same as talking to any of you that's older than me. When you talk about going to school, you talk about walking uphill in the snow both ways, and everything was harder in the old days. But it was, for sure, when they started in the feed department. They would scoop stuff onto the trucks, they'd have to scoop it off the trucks, and they'd have to, they did the same thing when it got to the farm. There were no tow motors around until the 90s, and the same action went into bags, throwing them on the truck and throwing them off once you got to the farm. When I first started working, Paul Sell was the feed salesman, and it was no big task for him to throw 40 bags of feed when he was 20 or 30 years older than I was. But that's the way it was. And going 20 or 30 miles was a long ways to go to deliver feed back in the early 90s. Our biggest month as far as feed production was in October of 2018, which is fiscal year 2019. And that month, we did 8,600 tons of feed, which if you take that times 12 is like 103,000 tons for the year, if we'd done that pace every month. That was like 1,985 tons of feed in a week and 360 tons in a day. And we got done. It was 15 semi-loads going in. They had to come in and they had to go out. There really isn't that much room to a feed mill. It required considerable teamwork and effort to accomplish this on a daily basis. 2020, things got to changing, and it is about the requirements to document and to verify feed production. So things just got a little harder to satisfy production requirements. The feed department was never viewed as a leading profit center, as Roger talked about for your cooperative, which makes it difficult for me to stand in front of you today. The changes within the livestock industry that each of us face daily is now too much to ask our patrons to absorb. I sincerely wish it was different, as I greatly value each feed customer and feed department employee. The feed department was the place that several UFC employees got their start. Gerald Jenkins and Terry Slipman both started in the feed department. First, and never worked for another company in their career. Even Kevin Schrader worked in the feed mill as a young man and later became a board of director. Today, 8 people work in the feed department. 3 employees who retired from Ursa Farmers Co-op with over 82 years of experience working at UFC. Tom Bardock, as we've said, 31 years. Mike Jansen, 30 years. And believe it or not, Monty Rowland is a young man with the least experience working at UFC, 21 years. And he's 75 years old. Tom and Monty worked some in the feed industry before they came to Ursa Farmers, so they even have more experience than what I stated here. Thank you to all employees for their efforts through the years of taking care of livestock needs, and producers for their business through the years.
We will close our normal operations August 30th and work with producers and locations to get down the road to the end of operations. On the grain side of business, things have changed greatly over the past several years. We are now able to load, as a company, 30 barges total in a week at the Three River locations. This is 2 full tows when you see them going down the river. We can do that in a week, and that's over 1.5 million bushels weekly. And during harvest, we have taken in over 1 million bushels of inbound grain, total of at all the locations in a day, several times. All this happens 1 truckload at a time. Producers hauling grain in and UFC trucks hauling in and out of our elevators. It is amazing what our employees are capable of. We are loading several thousands bushels of corn out of 1 million bushel bins at locations on a daily basis that consistently run low 14% moisture and 15%. That's unbelievable. We are getting prepared for harvest 2024 and are ready for another big year. We appreciate also the great effort also from the trucking and seed departments. Again, this is amazing what our employees accomplished serving our co-op owners and customers. Thank you, customers, suppliers, and employees.
Thank you, Karen, for the report. Now coming to the podium is Scott Meyer to make some introductions.
Hello, everyone. Kent mentioned the ability to load 30 barges a week. We are doing that last week, this week, next week, and probably the week after, preparing for harvest. And the thought of those 1 million bushel inbound days is fun, but it also gives me heartburn at my age. So I'm up here to thank everyone. If you or your spouse were a past board member of Ursa Farmers Co-op throughout its history, I would kindly ask you to please stand up. You or your spouse, please. Well, please give them a round of applause. On behalf of all the employees that are standing around and seated, and myself including, I would like to thank you for the privilege of working not only for you, but with you here at the Cooperative as well. I would also like to thank a few special guests that we have. We have Chris Bookert and Lindsay Fries with Channel Seed in attendance. We have Dwayne Schaefer and family with Schaefer Enterprises as well in attendance. And with that, I'm done.
Thank you, Scott. At this time, I call Kyle Roskamp to the podium to do the election of directors.
Can I ask Terry Slitman to be a temporary secretary? Yes. Could I get a report from Ted Canor, a report on what the nominating committee did? Geez, okay, let me restart. Can I get a report from the nominating committee by asking Ted Canor, secretary, to come forward and give the nominating committee report?
The nominating committee meeting was held Tuesday, January 25th, 2024 in Ursa, Illinois, the Ursa Farmers Cooperative Administrative Office. The purpose of this meeting was to select a list of candidates for election to the Board of Directors of Ursa Farmers Cooperative to be placed on the ballot. The committee consisted of the following: Kurt Schaefer, Garrett Bringer, Brent Gobert, Kyle Roskamp, John Flinch, Randy Cradle, and Ted Canor. Kyle Roskamp was chosen to be the chairperson, and Ted Canor was chosen to be the secretary. There are 4 positions up for election this year, with 5 candidates vying for board position.
We received 5 nominations that were submitted to the URSA Administrative Office by Tuesday, June 20th, 2024. The committee contacted those that expressed interest by the deadline, and each was asked to have their name placed on the ballot. The committee recommends that the membership place the following candidates on the ballot for purposes of election for a term of 2 years as follows: Brock Euskis, Eric Raby, Lance Arnold, Jeff Moore, and Justin Myers. I'd like to thank the members of the nominating committee for their due diligence in this process. I'll turn it back to Todd.
As reported by the nominating committee, the list of nominees up for election to serve a term of 2 years for the Board of Directors of URSA Farmers Cooperative are the following: Brock Euskis, Eric Raby, Lance Arnold, Jeff Moore, and Justin Myers. This year, we have had 5 candidates vying for 4 seats. Ballots were mailed out with the proxies with a deadline of Thursday, August 15th. At this time, I would ask Karen Voss to come forward to give the election results.
The following candidates received the most votes: Brock Eustace, Eric Raby, Lance Arnold, and Jeff Moore. Congratulations.
At this time, I would like to have a motion from the floor to elect the following for a term of 2 years: Brock Euskis, Eric Raby, Lance Arnold, and Jeff Moore. Make sure.
So moved.
John Schmidt, and, oh yes. Could I get a second?
I'll second.
Joseph. All those in favor of the motion say yea.
Yay.
All those opposed say nay. Then I'd like to ask Temporary Secretary Terry Schlitman to cast a unanimous vote. Tonight, we have re-elected Brock Euskis and Eric Raby, and we have added Lance Arnold and Jeff Moore to the Board of Directors of URSA Farmers Cooperative. Congrats.
Thank you, Kyle and Ted. That microphone is pretty intimidating, but you ought to try wearing a suit coat. All right. At this time, we have the dedication of Mr. Charles Truder and Eric Cassins for their service to your co-op for 10 years. Do you gentlemen have any words of wisdom you'd like to share? Because I would like to thank you for your mentorship and your friendship. I've been on for 6, and you have been nothing but supportive of this co-op and your community. You have served your communities well. I thank you for your friendship. Yes. One more round of applause. At this time is to call for unfinished or new business. Does anyone have an item they would like to come to the floor at this time? Seeing none, we would like to treat you with a video tour of South America. Tanner Van Ness took a group of patrons and cooperative friends, and they went to South America. We are going to see a brief video on that now.
going to keep this short and sweet. Drinks and appetizers after this, and I don't want to give away those. Fun fact, the drink of choice down in Brazil were caipirinhas. If you drank 2, you could speak Portuguese, and if you drank 3, you could understand Portuguese. Diane's drinks are pretty good too, so be careful tonight. So we went down to Brazil beginning or later part of January through the early part of February. It was a very important season down there in Brazil. It is the end of their first crop and the beginning of their second crop. This journey had many of us had preconceived notions about Brazilian agriculture, particularly around its environmental practices. And what we discovered was not only eye-opening, it also revealed how interconnected and similar the challenges between farmers in South America and those that we have back home. They have a lot of political challenges down there, like we do, as well as their workforce. Their workforce, they struggle finding educated help down there, but I would say that their agriculture sector is booming. And it was by far the cleanest part of Brazil was when we went to the agriculture sector. So I'll just get started on this, and if you have any questions, myself, I brought Ben Hugenberg. He was actually a fellow traveler on the trip. So if there's any questions through these slides, just yell them out, and we'll see if we can answer them for you. So the beginning part of the trip, we started in the northern part of Brazil, in Manaus, right by the Amazon River and the Amazon rainforest. So we went to a fruit plantation the first day we were there. And this is just a orange sorting and cleaning machine. And they look like wine, but they're actually oranges, and they're very delicious.
The oranges they sell down there are that color. They're not actually orange. They're green.
Wind blows pretty well, and then damage the whole plantation here. That's why you see the banana here broke down. So it happens a lot in here. And then because it's a very open area, no protection, and then they fell down from yesterday's storm, right here. That's why they use it, you know, and then be able to collect the board or less. Depends on how hot is it and how heavy the rain is.
Já vai dar 2 cachos de cada igual. Depois vai dar esse. Só que a gente não pode deixar muito fino. E a gente vai tirar o cachos dele. Então, certo, deixar o pai, o filho e o neto. Tipo assim, sempre 3. Mas às vezes, quando vai 2 filhos, não tem problema que maltrata tudo.
This was the Opera House in Manaus. It's world famous. It was built in 1884 during the rubber boom. That was a very pivotal moment for Brazil.
So a little background. On Manaus. It's the capital of the state of the Amazon, which is what you would all think of as the Amazon rainforest. It was an extremely wealthy state back in the 1800s, and that's what built this opera house. I don't know if he has any interior pictures, but this thing is crazy. Extreme wealth is quite evident in it. They told stories of when the rubber dealers used to come from Europe, that they would literally light a cigar as they walked in the room to meet these people with a $1,000 bill in our equivalency. It was strictly built to show how much wealth they had. The previous farm that we saw there was a very small farm, which would be very typical of this area of the world in Brazil. It had bananas and papayas and something else I can't remember the name of, that was a thorny palm tree. This area of Brazil is basically the rainforest. That's where we are here. Very hot, very humid, and Manaus is its capital.
Could lay brick straight, couldn't it?
So this was actually the meeting of the waters. It is between the Rio Negro and the Amazon River. The two rivers do not mix. They run side by side for 4 miles due to the pH and temperature of the waters, and also the water density.
And we saw this, it was clearly evident. I have a lot of pictures. This thing, the video and the pictures don't do this justice. There's a clear separation. These waters do not mix at all. This was the beginning of our trip. We went into Manaus and the Amazon state first. So this is how we started off our Brazil trip. That bridge did not meet OSHA standards.
That's my wife. And this was a local market. They had a little bit of everything. And there you can see the meat up there in the top right. I don't know if I would trust that meat. Looked a little warm in there.
The name is the knife is Haskirta. So the indigenous tribe, they use a machete.
This is how they would harvest
Hard
rubber
work,
back
very
then.
hard job. Machete to cut it. Chinese deer invent that. It's much more easy to do yourself. More or less for the people. Labors is still the same. Very hard labors is not, but easy to cut. Okay? So locally clean, and we do like this. See the white liquid cut over there. See, this is the latex. They're gonna start running here, and we make another cut in here, like a V-neck. And then the cup is gonna be right here. And the top is supposed to hold it, the both weight liquid. And then when the liquid's coming more,
So this guy was our guide. This is an actual rubber tree. He's cutting rubber to get the latex out of it. Extremely interesting. You put this stuff on your fingers and it is latex, kind of feels like a pencil eraser. And it's natural rubber. So for those of you a little unfamiliar, like I was, Brazil also had slavery. And that's how they used to harvest the rubber. All those mansions, all that wealth in that Manaus was built on the Amazon rainforest on all the plentiful rubber trees. And it was all used for slave labor. They were all sold that they were going to have a living and a good life. And what they would do is they would hand them a machete and a lantern and tell them to go out to the rainforest to give them a quota. And that was the end of it. So that's where it came from. Our guide was great, and the rubber tree harvesting was really interesting. Those rubber trees were just grown wild in the city, so he just picked one and cut it.
So now we'll go down to Monte Grosso and Cuba. This is where the country produces 30% of its soybeans. We went to the implement dealerships down there, and they were just like implement dealerships back home. We couldn't really find anything different. I mean, all the packaging and everything else was the same as you can see up here too.
Yeah, so their dealerships are pretty similar. A little bit of difference in some things that you would notice while you were there that you might not be able to see from the video. The city of Manaus, clearly there's not as much wealth there. We traveled from Manaus in the state of the Amazon, where there clearly used to be wealth, to the state of Mato Grosso now, which is heavily in ag production. Everything here was new, everything was clean. The people who were in this dealership, the ladies wore high heels and were very much professionally dressed, and everyone looked very nice. This was not, the dealership itself was the same. The atmosphere, you could clearly tell that's where the money came from, and that's where the money was, because it was an honor to be a salesman in a dealership. And these people dressed and walked with that personality.
I don't know if you can see some of the companies on the buildings here. There's Bayer, there's DeKalb, FMC, I think this was probably an ag retailer, if I was to guess, because they were all at the same facility, and they all stayed at the same hotel that we stayed at too.
Yeah, so coming from Manaus to here is an incredibly different feel. From where we were here, you would not know you were not in the United States. The dealerships, everything was modern, everything was new, everything was taken care of. The city of Manaus, as some people might say, you got that uncomfortability from being out of the country and maybe a little bit of queasiness. Here, not like that at all. The dealerships were all there, people were friendly, people were good, the town was clean, the town was nice. Everything that you would think of here, you had there. They had the Bayers, the seed dealerships, the machinery dealerships, the equipment dealerships. It really was not much different than driving down the town of Ursa, or a little bigger with dealerships. I mean, we had Fendt, New Holland, Case, all kinds of them. Some random one that I don't remember from Europe. This was very much the U.S. in Brazil.
So, and then this is the Moreno Group. It was a smaller sized operation. They farmed about 20,000 acres. So the size and scope of the farms down there are just unreal. And this was a very progressive family farm as well. And you'll see that in the next couple of slides.
So we had an actual guide who was on our bus trip and who was with us the entire time. The guy who started Moreno Group, I don't remember their last name, it was not Moreno.
No.
But he actually was a tractor salesman for our guy. He worked with the dealership. Then he came over and started this farm. And he started it from nothing. And this, as you go through and walk through these pictures, this is what it's developed into. These pictures here of, this is their welcome center. That's what this is. This is a building dedicated to nothing more than welcoming, I'm assuming some new hires, but more so business people to come in and deal with the farm.
And I don't know if you noticed or not, though, nobody's wearing shoes in their facilities.
This welcome center would have matched any five-star hotel you can think of. So their fluent language in Brazil is Portuguese. The owner of the farm did not speak anything but Portuguese. He had 3 kids, I believe, and they were trying to learn English. Our guide was also fluent in Portuguese and English, and he had actually traveled to the United States to learn what we do so that they could communicate back and forth. I'm sure there'll be more pictures, but that you see to the left, that is all employee housing, and that's all done to take care of for the employees. There was a park, there was a in-house, like a cafeteria that was very nice. They had, basically the farm itself had its own little village where its workers lived and worked. They were also, what you're looking at here, this farm was expanding into seed production. And they were actually trying to come up with their own seed. That on the left is the village. This is their seed production house, and I believe this is new. But they were trying to come up with their own branded seed, a Marengo Group seed. As of right now, it was just starting. So, interesting fact, that entire building was all air conditioned. The hotels were not air conditioned in Brazil. The room was air conditioned, but not the common areas. So for air conditioning, that was very impressive of itself, but it was needed to be able to hold the seed that they were trying to do for seed beans. It is a real thing. They drive with 45. They actually have dedicated amounts of percentages of their farms that they used to grow the eucalyptus wood, which is what you're seeing there. This particular grain dryer here, what you're seeing is a brand new one. Actually, but they were both brand new. Yeah. This one is water dried, so this actually uses heat from a wood fire to boil water. This is a different one. This is a wood style fire oven. It uses hot air to dry their beans as they come in, and that's how they dry their beans down. The other one that you saw was a wood-fired water style because it was used to dry the beans down for seed. This one would heat them up too quickly and kill germination. The other one would not. But there was a guy that literally just stoked this all day. And this thing, this farm had, I believe, 200 acres of eucalyptus trees that were all hand-cut just to feed the furnaces.
And they also, this group also had a cattle operation as well. I don't remember the exact head of the operation, but it was the size of it.
Yeah, they did have cattle.
Everything about the beef for consumer that now they demand to know who was the owner of blah blah blah, and what percent was
So for a little background, there's a lot of cattle in this area. So they have actually 3 crops per year. By government standards, they have to have 1 crop of basically fallow, if my memory serves me correct. And that fallow can be a hay or a grass type production. So what they'll do is they'll use the grass to feed the cattle. The cattle all have the hump on their back. They're also almost all grass fed. Even though they do have a lot of corn, they say they finish with corn. Anyone who went down there, I think, would tell you that every time we ate beef, you could barely chew it. It was tough, very tough, to the point where you just didn't take it anymore. But what they would do is they use this cattle as a rotation. The cattle were the rotation for their 3rd crop because they were, by government rule, they were only allowed to have 2 production, and then 1 had to be something else, which they would use as cattle feed.
So then this is a new farm. This is SLC Farms. They farmed 1 million first crop acres and 600,000 second crop acres. They were a corporate farm. You could buy shares of this time. It was pretty eye-opening and scary seeing this, I'd say. It was massive. The main thing we did with them too, we didn't get to see too much of their operations. We sat in a boardroom and they showed us slideshows. And this was actually one of their testing sites for their row crops.
Yeah, I believe this is the biggest farm in Brazil. I don't remember exactly, but they have an incredible amount of employees. Basically, if you thought Marengo Group was big, this farm was giant. They actually had a runway where they would bring in, they sell direct to China. They don't even use suppliers in the middle. Their cotton, they had buyers from China coming in to actually buy the cotton directly from them, not from a middleman. So this and Marengo Group are what you would think of when you think of Brazilian farms, just huge mega farms. And they exist, and they're there, and they're good at it. And they use technology like no other. They are looking for, they have it down to how much it costs in human error versus GPS guidance. So they were watching and testing everything to make everything as profitable as they possibly could.
And the map on the left-hand side is all their farms. And I don't know if you can read it or not, but those are the hectares of each farm. So the biggest one was 63,000 hectares, which is almost double an acre. Yeah, it's 100 and a half. 2.5. So 150,000.
So those are, almost all the ground was contiguous, by the way. So it was all one right there. And everything down there is done in hectares. So when you convert bushels per acre, it's a really hard conversion because they don't do that like that. They use hectares. And it's also not done in bushels, it's done in tons. So there's quite a bit of math that has to go into it pretty quick if you want to do on-the-fly stuff in your head. But this farm was also in the cotton. SLC farms cotton. Cotton was also probably their most, they told us it was probably their most profitable crop. Cotton was more profitable than soybeans down there. So that's where they were going to. To give you some perspective, and I don't remember if my numbers are correct, the vast majority of farmers who farm cotton did not actually have a cotton gin or a cotton harvester. And I could, again, be saying this incorrectly. This farm went 26 on its own. Just to give you some idea of its size and its scope. They are huge. When you pulled in, you were pulling into your own town. That's basically what it was.
And this is like their grading operation room here too. One thing that they told us that they were trying out were some different hybrids of cotton. They were colored different because that's how they would get graded on their cotton, was how pure it was. So they actually had some cotton hybrids that were orangish and brownish colored.
They actually gave us some of those, which I was incredibly shocked they do. I have a stack of some, but they were used. Pretty sure he's speaking Portuguese, but they were actually used because they were trying to develop a cotton that had a colorish to it in order for the Chinese to buy it and not have to use so much dye to dye the clothing. So that's how precise we were getting on to cost savings here. They were actually trying to develop a new cotton that had coloration in the cotton to save on the dye from China.
And this was a field of beans that were just harvested and corn was already popping up. I think they said it was planted 3 days prior.
Yeah, this is back at Marengo Group. This is actually Marengo Group's farm. Not all their combines are brand new. They had a whole fleet of combines. Most of them were all Class 8, all different ages and varieties. I never saw one draper head, but every one of these combine groups would have one small combine with it. And that one small combine's job was to go through and cut out the terraces. So land erosion is a huge thing. So the ground is red. It's almost like red sand. It doesn't feel like dirt so much. And so they have very strict rules on how things have to be done. But the combines were sitting there. I don't believe they'd actually finished cutting the field yet. You saw the planters sitting there, and the corn was already up. And I don't think that was safrina corn. If I remember correctly, that was popcorn.
It was popcorn, yeah. And then this was a tour of an ethanol plant that we took as well. It was sugarcane ethanol. this plant actually owned 88,000 hectares of land themselves. So that in of itself was pretty impressive.
This plant was cool. They were also trying to get us to buy stuff, like buy into the plant. They had shown some massive profitability recently. They, as he said, they were using sugarcane in order to make ethanol, and they gave us a bag of sugarcane, pure sugarcane. This was a really interesting plant. Lots of irrigation goes on in Brazil as well. So to give you a little background, those combines were sitting there, but when it rains, within a couple hours it's dry. That's how quickly and how much the soil, the water moves to the soil.
And then we also stopped by the IMEA group while we were down there. I would say that they're comparable to our Farm Bureau and our Corn Growers Association as well, kind of combined. They helped with the political side of things and helped get their views of their farm operations, try to help them as well. One thing that I thought was interesting was when you think about USDA, when they come out with numbers, the head guy is elected, but in Brazil, in CONAB, they change this whenever their president, whoever their president is. So their faith in in CONAB, which would be like our USDA, was very low because Lula is very far left. It was just kind of.
Their presentation was really kind of cool. It was much more the numbers, the meat bones of things. Like he said, very comparable to our Farm Bureau, to our corn growers, to our soybean association. Also very much so, we haven't touched on it too much, but the political landscape of Brazil is a lot more similar. Well, I'm not going to say that. They have a far leftist president, Lula. They don't trust him at all. The vast majority of the people who we went with and who we saw also did not. But again, we were in very rural areas. We also haven't shown anything. I don't think there really are any pictures. But at all these farms, they would tell us that they would have trucks, and all the grain had to be hauled sometimes 2 and 3 days to get to where it was going, to get to port. They were working on building trains and rails to kind of make that trip shorter. But they have a huge and vast waterway system. The Amazon River was huge. They had ports way up in the river, not just loading stations. I mean, full out big ports where big cargo ships could come up. The political landscape was so much so that our guide basically said that they had no use for their president at all. You can clearly tell they didn't like him, they didn't want him. They also did not have a ton of faith in their CONAB numbers. They would tell you that they're skewed to whichever way the president was at the time. And the current president really didn't have much use for ag in Brazil. So something else I kind of mentioned was very restrictive. So you think we have it bad here with restrictiveness from the government. Brazil has it 10 times worse. I don't remember if the numbers are, but I believe it was 30% of their land had to stay in trees.
So up here, you can actually see 40% was preserved by producers. So if you bought a 100-acre tract, you would have to put 40 acres of it into trees and not get paid anything for those acres. That was something new that I learned down there. I had no idea that was a thing. And it also varied by what state you were in. Like the Amazon state was 80%. Down there in Mato Grosso, it was anywhere from 25 to 30% of the acres.
That also went by grandfathered in. So when this came through, so having to buy the ground and then put the trees in is true. But the thing is when you would buy the 100 acres, you would already buy 40 acres of that with it with trees on, so you didn't have to do it. I believe when it was grandfathered in, it was grandfathered in 25%. The new rule came up to 40%. But basically what Tanner was saying is, if you were to buy 100 clean acres of ground, that was all 100% tillable, 100 clean hectares of ground that was all 100% tillable, you had to have, in addition to your 40% that you already had, you had to have another 40 extra acres of trees someplace in order. You could never make the ratio of your whole farm go off. So you always had to maintain that ratio. So it was, you couldn't just, and this included like pushing out around a waterway.
So now that we've left Mato Grosso, we traveled down to the southern part of Brazil by, I forget, Jose, I have no idea what to say. Anyways, it was down by Argentina and Paraguay border on the southern tip of Brazil. Yeah, those are some rare birds up there. So this is the world's largest waterfall. We also saw that while we were down there. It was actually one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. The top right picture would be their raccoon down there, so they hung out a lot at that, I would call it a tourist attraction because of the trash and garbage. I would say that we were all pretty exhausted after walking this waterfall too. I don't know how many miles we walked that day, but it seemed like quite a few. It was hot. It was hot and humid. It was hot and humid. This is actually the river below the waterfall. We took a boat tour on the river down below the waterfall. This is the Bua Dam. It's the world's 2nd largest hydroelectric dam. Brazil and Paraguay, they've partnered on this endeavor. And the picture on the left is the spillway of the And this was the triple frontier, so this is where Paraguay, Brazil, and Argentina all met. If you're standing at that spot, you can see all 3 countries. And thank you so much for everybody coming tonight and let me come up here, Ben come up here and tell you about our experience. And we actually do have the PowerPoint presentation from the IMA group, so if you ever want to look at those numbers, I'd be more than happy to email those to you guys.
If you ever get a chance, I really recommend you go down there. Very eye-opening. It's not probably what you're thinking of. Very glad I went. Very well worth the time and the trip. A lot of fun. Never really felt uncomfortable, like I said, being in a foreign country. It was very much felt like you were in the U.S., at least where we were at. Our tour guide was great. Everything was really good. Very much an interesting trip. Thank you.
Just as a little background on that, like every 2 years we try to put together a trip. It says URSA sponsored, but the participants pretty much, they pay their way. URSA will put a little funds in, we've got connections, we'll do a few things as far as some lunch. And usually these trips are about, someone comes up with an idea, hey, it would be cool to go see or something. And if you've got that, or something that's maybe on your bucket list, or something you've got interest in seeing, most likely there's a group that would also like to see that. We'd be happy to put that together. So this trip, Tanner, Ben, how many days was this trip? Was it? 13. 13 days. It was a long one. So it was a good one. And so again, if you've got interest in something that strikes your fancy, I mean, I think Peggy's been instrumental, Tanner's been instrumental. I think Susie's next up on the regiment. She gets to host the next one, I think. So that's the way it works. So, thank you.
All right, at this time, this is a little bit of an impromptu for an annual meeting of Ursa Farmers Co-op. Ursa Farmers Co-op, 3 fiscal years ago, pledged some money to John Wood Community College, the Orr Center, the Fred Bradshaw building. It was a U of I, John Wood Community College building on the U of I campus. So therefore, it's 100% hands-on learning. We have Mike Tenhouse with us tonight, and we have Bruce Easterhouse. We're going to do an impromptu photo in this corner of anyone who went to John Wood in any fashion or form or sent children to John Wood. In this corner, we're going to take a group photo holding a check. The check is a large number. First year, Ursa Farmers Co-op pledged $5,000, and CHS matched that. The second year, Ursa Farmers Co-op pledged $5,000, CHS matched that, so did CoBank. The final year, Ursa Farmers Co-op pledged $5,000, CoBank and CHS matched again. So we have a $40,000 check that we pledged over 3 years, and we would like everyone to join us that went to John Wood for a photo in this corner, please.
No different than you. They were more than possible. Very high. Yeah. We call it correction. It was to fly out of the country with where we went. You'll find out that can I choose? It is that type. It looks so delicious.
Let's go.
Bruce, thank you. Appreciate
Our close is Mike Jansen and Tom Barton. Mr. Tom. It is my job to close out this 104th meeting of Ursa Farmers Co-op, but I want to take a little quip, a little story, and I want Tom and Mike to hear this. So Tom and Mike, I want you to be picturing either Doc Hatcher or Doc Cook. Doc Cook's the veterinarian, Doc Hatcher was a little doctor in Ursa, right across my gas station. So everything's bigger in Texas, correct? Well, there was a short person from Texas, a very short person from Texas visiting Ursa, Illinois, was visiting family. He arrived on a Wednesday, and by Friday he was in terrible pain. The terrible pain was below his belly button and somewhere in the family jewelry area. So he needed to see a doctor. There was no Doc Hatcher, so he went to Doc Myron Cook, and he was at Doc Cook's office. Doc, can you help me? And Doc looked him over, and he's like, well, does everything hurt when you take that big belt buckle off? It's the size of a Chevy hubcap. The guy says, nah. He says, I'd never take off my hat and my belt buckle. When I do, it feels even worse. So Doc looked him over a little more, and he's like, okay, I think I can help you, but I'm not a people doctor, so put this pet blanket on and stand on top of the exam table. So Dylan puts on the short Texan, puts on the blanket, gets on top of the table, and Doc Cook comes up there, and he's, oh my goodness, things are kind of angry down here. He says, I think I can help you out. And the Texan says, the very short Texan says, do you got any medication or some way to relieve stress? He said, well, I got these two pet toys. You put them in your hand and you squeeze for all you're worth. So he does. He's just squeezing them. He's got his eyes closed. And the doc says, well, I need a large pair of shears and a very sharp scalpel. And the Texan turns white. He's standing there just to squeeze and snip, 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 slice. Snip, snip, slice. Snip, snip, slice is what the gentleman on top of the table hears. And when Doc Cook's done, he says, hey, I need you to get down, get fully dressed again, and walk up and down the hall. The gentleman gets down, he's very short, puts on his clothes, and walks up and down the hall and says, wow, I do feel better. Doc Cook says, I'm not done with you. Go up and down them steps a time or two. The young man went up and down the steps a time or two. Doc, you're a miracle worker. Oh my goodness, you're a miracle worker. What I owe you? Doc Cook says, well, it's $20 for an office visit. And this Texan's completely got. He's never been to Illinois. He's been hurting since he's been here. And this guy fixed him for $20. He's like, Doc, can I ask, what was you doing down there? He says, well, I cut the top 3 inches of your brand new cowboy boots. Ladies and gentlemen, if there's no more business, we're going to close this 104th annual meeting. Have a good night. Join us for hors d'oeuvres, and Bank of Springfield is providing some refreshments. Thank you. Well, I'd like to introduce Mr. Plunkett and Mr. Suter for some door prizes. The first 2 door prizes, I believe, are going out for turning your proxies in on time. The second 2 door prizes are going out for attending the seat. Gentlemen.
Ralph Flange. Can't hear you. Ralph Flange. So one of the $250 gift card is to Ralph Plenge, the other is to Jerry Bowen. And then we have, what kind of gift cards? Kelly? This is for the folks that are here. We have 2 gift cards. This is Jason isn't coming. I'll have Charlie go. All right, so we got 669-8164. Uh-oh. 669-8168.
Save you one? All right, here you go.
And now we are done.
Thank you, everybody. So we're going to open up, got some refreshments, we've got some appetizers, things like that. We're all going to be around the mingle, have questions, but once again, thank you for the business. Thank you for coming out tonight. Greatly appreciate it. And congratulations to our new board members. Looking forward to working with you, and many thanks to our retiring board members. Really appreciate everything you've done. Thank you, everybody.